I'm Mike Friis with the Department of Administration. I manage the Land Commission program in the area. We've got Codie or Veregin from the Stateholder's office. We're going to talk about a couple of initiatives and a proposal related to discussing Act 20. Quickly, an overview of this sort of panel discussion is talk about Act 20 a little bit and why, how these initiatives come together, and then specifically the initiatives, the integrated broadband mapping project done by the State Cartographer's office with coordination from our program, the mission program. Then going into the version 1 database with the Statewide Parcel Map being led by the State Cartographer's office. And Peter is going to talk about the planning process framework document that we shared with folks. So I think my role here really is introduce the topic. Also, just briefly overview of Act 20. As a lot of people know, Act 20, last biennium budget, directs DOA to develop a statewide parcel map as well as providing some additional funding through sort of the reuse of the Social Security redaction funds. In addition to that, the parcel map has certain requirements to it, information requirements attached to it, and additional responsibilities given to the Land Information Program as well as expectations of individual counties. Those being increased frequency of development of land information plans, and with that increase in funding that's directed to the land information program, Peter's going to talk about the framework and the funding idea that we want to share with people. Leading up to the parcel map, I think Codie's going to talk about the integrated broadband mapping project, how that led to a model for the statewide parcel map. Howard will talk about the version 1 database model that we're working on to sort of create the expectations for counties of what we need to see from them in advance of the 2012 deadline. And then again, Peter's going to sort of wrap it up with a discussion on the framework document we've sent out, and then we'll have hopefully time for some questions.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. My name is Codie, part of the SCO staff, and I am serving as the project coordinator for this broadband mapping project. And I'm just going to talk briefly about how this project sort of situates our offices for beginning on the version 1 project. So, what is the EBM project? Well, first off, its objective is to create statewide address points and parcel layers from local level jurisdictional data that includes county level data and in some cases municipal level data. It is funded by the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin due to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and its purpose is to serve various needs of the Public Service Commission in their broadband mapping activities. So it's a project in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but through quickly. First and foremost, this project builds off of what the Just Do It team put together. And the Just Do It project was a very important project in articulating the purpose of such statewide layers. But there's some key differences between what that project was and what this project, the EBM project, and the version 1 project will provide. So first and foremost, the address point, or the EBM project is focused on creating address point parcel information at the statewide level. So essentially that's 2 layers versus 1. And there are a number of different build out actions that we are taking in order to build a more comprehensive database in the EBM project. And one of those specific things actually is negotiating licenses negotiating fees where those are appropriate, and also providing a comprehensive report of what was done for the project deliverable, and taking action to resolve gaps in the county level data. We actually found that there are several cases of jurisdictions where municipal level data is actually not included in county data sets, and it is appropriate to call on municipalities in order to have coverage there. There's also some steps that we are taking in order to coordinate schema and parse clean and standardized attributes so that we're able to retain as much information from the data sets as possible. And finally, we are actually building in a little bit more added value to the project in order to serve some specific needs of the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. So just to talk a little bit about the timeline of this project, I think it adds a little bit of context to beginning the version 1 project. We started this project in the middle of last summer, and our primary call for data was in the middle of November. A key thing to note is that after 1 month after our first call for data, 63 counties had actually submitted their data at that point. It wound up taking another 5 months to get those remaining 9 counties, and then those municipalities sort of came in intermittently. As we sit right now, we're about a month away from the final delivery, and right now we've had all of our contributing data sources ETL into a common data model, and we're sitting at a point where we're going to be standardizing and improving the data just so that it fits the needs of the client the best. We look towards the 2013 WLIP or WLIA survey, in understanding the nature of the data that we were going to be calling for. And this map actually articulates some of the willingness that the local counties are able to see that we anticipated for data submission. So as you can see here, it's a positive message overall, but there's some certain areas where there's a reluctancy to contribute data. On a positive note, this map articulates the 100% participation that we've achieved in this project. This is really thanks to a lot of communication between our partners at DOA, and thank you to all of our data users. I know a number of you are out there. As you can see, there are a handful of counties that did require us to sign a license agreement, and there was in fact one county that required us to pay a small fee. I did talk a little bit about the municipalities that we identified as gaps in the county level data. This map shows those specific municipalities, those 39 jurisdictions for gaps and parcels. And this map articulates those 49 jurisdictions that we identify as spatial gaps added to the data. I should mention also that there were 7 jurisdictions that added to one spatial parcels. And for more information on this, you can see our project website, which will lead you to this URL, or if you have an So what to leave you today with will be EBM, this project, as a segue to this version 1 project. There are a number of key aspects that this project will naturally feed into this next project, and specifically these 4 points that I put down here. The infrastructure for data submissions, procedures for getting data from the local jurisdictions, bringing it in and putting it on our servers. The data assessment and organization practices that our team has put together have been really scrutinized and proven to be effective over the last year, and so we'll be building on those in the future. And then obviously the GIS tools and technical workflows can be close towards to build up and improve for achieving some fast projects. Probably most specifically that domain knowledge that's gained in those specific jurisdictions, understanding the schemas, understanding the lack of metadata or metadata that exists for each jurisdiction is a very good takeaway that can be used for this. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Howard and we can talk a little bit about the actual version.
Well, for those of you on this side of the room, I'm Veregin, Cartographer. For those of you on this side of the room, I think you already know me. to give an overview of the so-called V1 project, which is really an extension to the EBF project that Codie's already alluded to. What is the V1 project? Well, it's part of the Statewide Parcel Initiative mandated by Act 20 that we've all heard so much about and participated in. The purposes of the project include helping counties to meet their Act 20 requirements for getting their parcel data into a format that's viewable and searchable online. It will produce the first public statewide digital parcel map or parcel database for the state. The EBM project is also, as Codie pointed out, producing a statewide parcel and address point layer, which will be complete to the level of 72 counties. However, that parcel map and address map are not intended to be necessarily viewable by the public, so this will be the first publicly viewable version. And like the EBM project, this is a partnership between the Department of Administration, between the SCO, with collaborations out to other municipal governments. A little bit more comparison between EBM and V1. EBM project that deals with, as Codie said, two different separate data layers, address points and layers, where or address points and parcels, whereas the V1 project focuses on parcels only. The EBM project is, as I said, not intended for the purpose of public sharing, whereas the V1 project is. The EBM project is really driven by Public Service Commission needs, whereas the V1 project is something that's mandated by statute. And finally, the EBM project is really focused on specific business needs of the state agency as opposed to the V1 project. It's focused on assisting counties and also helping the Act 20 Parcel Map Initiative become a reality. They also have different funding sources. What are the deliverables of the V1 project? Well, first and foremost, the statewide parcel database. As in the case of the EBM project, this is going to be aggregated from county and municipal data sets. It will include those attributes required by statute. We had a good presentation on that this morning. Assessment data, zoning, addresses, and acreage will be included as part of this delivery. And in addition to that, there will be a set of final reports detailing the methods that will be used, recommendations for standards, and also a very important topic, benchmarking, which Peter is going to talk a little bit about in his section of the presentation. Without a scope for the SCO, for the State Cartographer's Office, for the V1 project are a lot of things. One of them is the whole data hosting side of it, the searchable component. We know that that's important. It's just not something that we, the State Cartographer's Office, are going to deal with. Data updates, it's a one-time shot. Over that year, we'll obtain county data and data from municipalities put together to create that social map, but there's no updating plan. We're not going to be filling large gaps in the data, although as Codie alluded to, there are some cases where we resolve some of the smaller issues associated with missing data. There will be no coordinate manipulation, no rubber sheeting or higher order polynomials applied to the spatial data, whatever you want to call it. We're not going to be resolving boundary discrepancies, places where boundaries between county A and county B don't match up. Again, this is a very important issue. It's just not something that we're able to resolve in the time frame and budget of this project. However, we may be identifying where such discrepancies exist. It may be beneficial for counties to get together and work out why those problems happen. We won't be doing any prioritization of investments or allocation of WLIP funds or creating governance models to implement standards or identify priorities. Really, what we're doing in the SEO is really a technical implementation to create a parcel. Timetable for this, we're starting in the summer, less than a month from now. Our first request for data beginning in September, and a couple of versions coming out at the end of 2014 and the end of March 2015. The final statewide parcel layer by the end of June 30th, by the end of June 2015, so about a year from now, this will be available with our final report to the project ends 3 months after that. Just a couple of comments about the benefits of this project. It's going to help the counties, as I said already, meet their Act 20 requirements. It's going to help the DOA implement its Parcels and Act implementation model, which is, as I said several times already, a requirement under the legislation passed through for 20, and it'll create the first public statewide digital parcel map for Wisconsin. That is important. It'll meet business needs for statewide parcels from hopefully a whole diverse group of users. We had a great talk this morning about how parcels can be useful in transmission line work, and that's a good example of what we're talking about here. It'll enhance ROI, return on investment, for all that GIS infrastructure we have, all the money that we spent through the WLIP program over the years to really put that data and put those GIS hardware and software packages and those trained technicians for producing something that's extremely valuable. Hopefully we'll develop standards and methods for data exchange. And benchmarks prioritize the investment improvement efforts, which, as I said, Peter will talk a little bit about. Enhance working relationships between local and state governments, model a successful statewide data integration scenario, and ultimately improve Wisconsin's position nationwide. If you look at National State's Geographic Information Council or NIST's Geospatial Maturity Assessment, the most recent one for 2013, you'll see that about 15 states have a statewide parcel layer that's pretty much complete. Most of those make that layer available to the public, and a slightly larger number of states have some type of program in place, or partial steward program in place in order to manage that data. So Wisconsin isn't ahead of the curve, we're not necessarily behind the curve. We're somewhere in the middle. Hopefully this project will help us take more of the lead nationwide. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Peter to talk about the planning process framework.
All right, I was hoping to have a podium to hide behind, but I guess I'm not here by myself, no protection, no place to put my notes. So I'm going to go through the Statewide Parcel Map Initiative planning process framework document. We print out some hard copies, which DeVita, my coworker, will be distributing. So this is something that Mike Friis emailed out in a letter from our division administrator at Herreid. So if you're on the planning folder listserv, you should have gotten them by now. And I'm guessing the email is forwarded to the various stakeholder organizations. But I'll just make a plug for the land information listserv. If you're not on it, it's a good way to get information. You don't get too much junk email. It's not it's not a high volume traffic, but you do get some important communications from DOA such as this. And also, I want to point out that DeVita, my coworker, did add a lot of value to this document. She's been working with us as a half-time LTE during the last year as she finished up her PhD in communications at UW-Madison, so congratulations to her. She just built that up. So regarding the document, I'm just going to walk you through it and answer some frequently asked questions, but I'll leave plenty of time for everyone up here, including my priest, to answer some questions afterwards. So beginning with the first page, first of all, this is a concept document that outlines the planning process framework, which includes strategic initiative grants. That grant spending authority would need to come through the upcoming biennial budget process, in which we need to raise the statutory spending authority for the WLIP. And so one commonly asked question is, well, how does that happen? Well, DOA will presumably make that statutory spending authority increase in its state agency budget request, which would be drafted sometime in August and submitted by statutory requirement by September 15th. Tentatively, we base that request on this concept. However, it is important that we get community buy-in in order to do so. So that's why we're asking for your comments and feedback by July 11th. another commonly asked question in which, in the first sentence of the document, beginning January 1st, 2015, counties will submit about $7 million per year to the Land Information Fund. So I've got a number of, so a common question has been, well, is that realistic? My county's revenue is way down. And I would say it's not yes, this is a conservative estimate. As with the prices in real estate, the number of transactions also rises and falls. But this is a conservative estimate based on a 5-year average, and this is $7 million would be below, 15% below the 5-year average for documents recorded statewide. So I'll move on to the next page. So this is an overview of the strategic initiative grant concept. And the basics are such that each county, all 72 counties, would each be eligible for $50,000 in strategic initiative funding. However, that new funding would come with a host of new grant obligations, which is the flip side. And chief among those are benchmarks. And that was something Howard touched upon in his last presentation. And a benchmark is a standard or level on a specific measure of data quality for a particular data set. In other words, it's a standard or level of currency, accuracy, and currency accuracy that we want counties to maintain statewide. So it'd be a minimum that we want at least at the statewide level. And so how would we be selected? We'd be selected through a participatory planning process. So that would determine the objectives, which would get translated into benchmarks, which would guide funding priorities for the strategic initiative grant funding. So for example, statewide objective could be complete digitization of parcels statewide. The benchmark for each county would be 100% digitization of your parcels. And for most counties, they get it done. But there still are a number of counties that have a ways to go with parcel digitization. So if your county X was at 90% complete, then they would have to prioritize your strategic initiative grant funding to reach 100%. So that would not be the only benchmark. So we first of all divide up the parcel benchmarks, and parcels would be the first priority between short-term and long-term. Short-term would be those that were those parcel attributes that are required to be posted online by 2017, according to Act 20, in a format yet to be determined by DOA, and it would be determined through this version 1 database project. So those would make up the short-term benchmarks, which will be specified through the version 1 database project. The longer-term benchmarks would assess quality and completeness of county parcel data sets, and those would get into such things as parcel line accuracy and additional attributes that we'd like to see completed to benefit business drivers throughout the state. And the version 1 database project would provide some quantitative basis to form those benchmarks, but we want to decide those benchmarks, which are from strategic objectives through a planning process that includes much input from the various stakeholders statewide. And this includes the local level as well as state agency level, private sector, so forth. And then these benchmarks could also extend to other layers, such as aerial imagery LiDAR. But as we've also stressed from the beginning, parcels are the priority. I should also point out that we have an objective to make these benchmarks clearly defined, easy to understand, and easy to assess objectively whether they have been met or not, so that we can set the right expectations for counties in terms of grant criteria, and we can also easily monitor yes, no, that has been met. And also, these benchmarks would likely come in the form of a short checklist. So, for instance, if county X or county Y has met benchmark 1, then they would prioritize towards benchmark 2, and then benchmark three. For instance, if there's only three, and it's not all three, then they could spend the rest of their grant money at their discretion, as long as it's consistent with their land information plan. Moving on to expenses, so this is better displays the budget scenario from page 2, and you can see that about 90% of the funding that goes into the Land Information Fund would go back out to counties in the form of grants. So that's the vast majority, because what we understood the intent of the legislation. About 3% would go towards grant administration. That's our cut, and the remaining balance left over would go to fulfill other duties of the Land Information Program that are specified for DOA in the Land Information Program statute. And these include development of statewide parcel map and clearing the house for access to land information, maintenance and inventory of land information, or maintenance of and distribution of inventory land information, and coordination of land information systems modernization. And so I should walk back here. So it lists 520,000 for the statewide parcel map development and other landful duties. So we've gotten some questions about this figure. Why is it so precise? How is it calculated? And it sounds precise, but it's really just what's left over. So if you take $7 million, you subtract out the grants, you subtract out the grant administration costs. This is what you get left over, $528,000. And so that's how we calculated it. And I should also say that any products that we fund out of this pot of money, what's left over, would have to be very well defined, fall under our statutory direction, and have clearly identified statewide benefits. So, and because we want to be good stewards of these land info public dollars. And I can say that, the only project that so far has been clearly defined, and which would come from this funding source, is the version 1 Parcel Map Database project. So distribution of funding. So under this concept, every county would have a minimum of $151,000 in WLIP funding. So that's, the base budget grant will make up the difference between $100,000 and what you're retaining, and then they get a $50,000 strategic initiative grant, and then they get that additional $1,000 training education grant. And so $151,000, well, that's about what Sheboygan County, Ozaukee, St. Croix will collect in terms of retained fees this year. So every county up to that level. Timeline. So the timeline just shows milestones, big milestones that we've identified. We'll fill in this timeline or a version of it with more milestones in the future, more details. You can see though that across the top we have the annual grant cycle that we have established last year and releasing the Veregin grant application October 1st. We intend to keep this date as an annual application release date into the future. Outreach. So first, we want to focus on the counties, and we've already started with a 2014 WLIP County Survey that went out on May 27th. Last Tuesday, it's due June 13th, and it includes some questions to counties specifically about parcel mapping and also about how they would like to prioritize investment in their county parcel data sets. We expect to have results available to you by July 18th, so next month. Should also mention, as I did in the earlier panel, that we have a goal of meeting with each county by the end of 2015 to gather input from a broad base of county stakeholders for this parcel initiative. And so some topics that we could discuss are the survey questions, the parcel initiative planning process, and anything else that people want to discuss related to WLIP. I should say that I do want to meet at least with the LIO, but then I'm throwing the invitation out there also to other members of the Information Council and any other interested persons or stakeholders. And this doesn't have to be a formal meeting of the council to transact a regular council business. It's just, I just want to provide the opportunity and reach out to a broad base of local stakeholders to participate and add their input and be part of the discussion. But I don't want to over formalize this meeting or make it out to be anything bigger than it is. So I've already scheduled these visits with a number of counties for the end of this month in July, and I'll be scheduling for more in the upcoming months. And I'll try to make a point of scheduling meetings at least a month in advance. I know everybody won't be able to make it, everybody takes vacations, but I at least want to meet with the LIO, and I'll try to give plenty of notice. So on the last page, we have the title out of scope of this document. And this doesn't mean out of scope of the parcel initiative. This just means it's addressed in other documents, such as our version 1 project description in the form of an MOU between DOA and SDO, or will be addressed in future communications. So I guess one way to describe the planning process framework document is, it outlines framework for the planning process, and you can think of it as an actual written framework of, a house or building you're constructing, and you can think of the context of the parcel, providing the rights or the context for the parcel initiative in the form of Act 20. So you can think of Act 20 as the land of the parcel. You can think of the foundation as the strategic initiative grant concept. You can think of the individual beams that are being erected as the measures that we've already described, and the additional ones we'll be describing in the future. So we've already described the version 1 database project, the 2014 county survey, county visits, but we'll in the future we'll be describing version 2, version 3 of the Parcel Map database, stakeholder and other, our state agency and other stakeholder outreach and so forth. So a common question, a frequently asked question has been, well, how should we respond to the DOA document? And well, you can respond any way you want. But Ed did request in his letter for feedback and comments. And as I said, feel free to be candid with your comments. But he specifically requested for desire for stakeholder organizations and entities to respond with representative letters or common resolutions by July 11th. And furthermore, I'd say what we're mainly looking for is to tell us mainly whether or not this planning process framework, this concept is acceptable moving forward, so that we're moving forward with you on the basis of support into this planning process. And I would say, when you look at this building, there's a lot of work left to be done, a lot of decisions to be made, so we're looking to you to move forward with that basis of support and constructing this. So with that, I'll open up to Q&A. Yes, Mike.
That possible levy or possible match, would that be new levy dollars? You got that on first page 2. Could require a local match.
Yeah, it could require a local match in the form of levy dollars, or it could require in the form of base budget funding or KP funding. That concept hasn't been fully fleshed out, but we're putting that out there as a possibility. Yes, Doug.
I guess is there any more thoughts? I know that what your task was like 2017, if you get something posted, I guess my question for thinking about this further and what we need in our county is what becomes the drop dead deadline of having 100% complete with no holes statewide parcel? That hasn't really been defined. What is the
When we talk about complete, for that one example I gave, I was meaning digitization, is obviously complete as many, when you just talk about complete, there can mean many different things.
I guess in the sense I'm talking about is what year are we kind of expecting of being required to have parcels mapped 100% on count? Are we talking 2020 or are we talking 2022?
Well, that has yet to be specified as a format. So the new requirements from Act 20, it says that DOA will determine a searchable format for the specific parcel attributes, and that format could be a GIS format, which would imply digitization. But hopefully, with this additional funding, we should get counties, Cincinnati County to that point. But that hasn't been established as a hard and fast rule yet. We have to look at that because we want to make sure that we can get all counties to that level if we're going to set that benchmark. We don't want to set benchmarks that can't be obtained. That's right.
Peter, can you explain once again, you said July 11th, you want feedback on this document and more content, or is there a process to fill in more content to this framework?
So we're not going to add any more content to the framework document, planning process document that we distributed, but we want your feedback on whether this planning process outline is acceptable to move forward on. Because we have, community buy-in to move forward on the parameters of this planning process. And I don't need to hog all the answers. Anybody else might want to jump in? Yes.
Back to what Mike asked about looking at the 50,000 county could require local maps, so you're basically talking that it's possible that the local agencies would have to come up with another 50 grand as a budget to get this.
I don't know if it'll be 50 grand, but we're leaving that possibility open for local match requirement. But we would not make this overly onerous that the county is going into poverty, bankrupting other programs to keep their strategic initiative grant.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's subject to comment. We'd like to hear some people about that.
Yeah, this could be the result of a planning process. We're going to go through that process to make those decisions on something like local match. So we gather your input before we made that requirement. Yes, Mike.
Along those lines, in the early days of the program, we actually saw an infusion of levy dollars into the program when there was a care stand out front. And so you got, kind of accelerated the land records program in the early days to be able to get those additional levy dollars. What I see now is a lot of the levy dollars have been pulled back from the program, and they're saying sink or swim on your own program revenue. So I think could be some benefit to it in terms of requiring a certain amount of levy match for the overall program. Yes, it could be difficult, but I think there's some benefit for it.
Bill?
So you want feedback on what we think the other DOA land info duties are too? The green pieces in the puzzle?
Well, those are specified in statute, but obviously we'll have to work with the community to implement, to carry out those duties.
So,
After July 11th. We're not going to be able to solve all this and fill in all the details before July 11th.
right, but that's like, so just in 2016-17, that's $1 million, right?
Yes, but as we said earlier, that's just a placeholder. It's not a pre-commitment to spending. Any projects that are funded out of that source would have to be very well defined, but the statewide benefits identified. So just because we put that in this document doesn't mean that money automatically is flowing to be spent by DOA.
And that's just for parcels, right? That's not for any other strategic, or that's not for anything else with the foundational elements. That's,
Well, it could be, Bill,
Could be.
but our focus is on meeting the requirements of Act 20.
Yeah.
That's, we have a commitment to make to that. And certainly moving forward, we don't see parcels as a final stop in the land fish program. There could be other things moving forward.
it just seems like a lot of money to build the parcel map.
No, it's not just building the parcel map, so for
So
the,
that's, so it's part of it is what you talked about earlier on, so this might be parcel steward that gets hired on to continue this process, and this might be funding or staff that would integrate, going forward. Is that part of that?
well, it could be, but we haven't requested any positions. I can say that the version 1 database project, which is well defined, is going above and beyond just creating a statewide parcel map layer, as Howard specified, that we're also assessing county parcel data sets in terms of completeness, accuracy, currency. That project is a 15-month project and is costing $121,000, so roughly $100,000 a year. It is doing much more than just building a statewide parcel map layer.
No, and I know, and I'm just wondering, like, if that's part of our responsibility to help you define what we think as a community should be getting pushed into that, right? So, if that's like setting up a SD repository with a geodata service so the counties can just synchronize with the state going forward, or, are those things that you guys want feedback on?
I would say yes, very much so, but you don't have to include it in necessarily have to articulate all those things that the counties want from the DOA by July 11th. Think through it in terms of a process, but yes, definitely. Tony.
Things like the aerial photography and LiDAR and the other statewide kind of collection of data or process or project that do they have to percolate up through the counties through this process? Or is something that, state agency commitment to well-defined project or creative and say, look, this could be something that would be worthwhile for the rest of the state?
Well, there's not clear statutory authority for spending on those layers in terms of data creation. So there's not clear statutory authority for what you're talking about, and also in terms of allocation of grant dollars to state agencies for necessarily for those activities. But this could be part of longer term what we're doing with that remaining balance after we fund county grants.
Yeah, that would be a clear and transparent process to sort of push something forward. Again, we would only focus on something that would have a statewide benefit, but that's certainly an option.
I think that would have to take some, definitely some buy-in from the, LIOs and the other stakeholders in terms of producing that product. That could be some sort of thing behind that makes sense.
Louder. So as a county that is at the $100,000 level, I would certainly welcome an extra $50,000 in my budget. I think kind of what Doug was hinting at is that should it be a bit more strategic and the resources and helping those counties and
Well, I think that the base budget grants are the first mechanism that they have to get those capacity up in those counties that aren't receiving as much in fees. Secondarily, we've heard from contributing counties that they're looking to get something back from the program. So I think that we're trying to sort of normalize that curve that Peter showed of funding, and hopefully that will help. We've thought long and hard about this, and it's not the first time, but at this point, we only have certain mechanisms to develop money. Base budget's there, training education's there, strategic initiative is one that's there that we can provide a known level of funding to counties, so it provides some predictability to them, and help in addition some additional funding to those counties that may need that push, that infusion of cash to reach the agriculture part. I don't know what more we can do given the administrative rule and statute.
All right, if there are any more questions now, we look forward to your feedback. And as I said, we appreciate it much. Send it to us before July 11th. Otherwise, feel free, in addition to any formal letters, just to call us anytime, discuss anything related to WLIP.